My ex-boyfriend demanded half my house, claiming that I was successful because of him. I didn't realize posting one picture would flip my entire life upside down. All I did was stand in front of my new house, keys in hand, giant grin on my face, and upload it with the caption, "Finally mine." That was it. No bragging, no humble bragging, no inspirational quote about hard work. Just me celebrating something I'd been saving for since college. But the thing about the internet is, you forget who's still watching you. And in my case, one particular person had been watching very, very closely. His name was Ethan, my ex-boyfriend of 3 years and the worst financial decision I ever made. When we broke up, I thought I'd closed the book on him permanently. Spoiler, I hadn't. It started so quietly I didn't even recognize it as the beginning. The day after I posted that photo, Ethan texted me for the first time in nearly a year. The message was short. Congrats. House looks nice. No apology. No explanation. Just a man who once lived rent-free in my apartment and drained my savings contacting me out of nowhere like he was checking in on an old coworker. I typed thanks and didn't say anything else. I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. Later that week, while I was painting my bedroom walls, I heard a knock at the front door. Sharp, impatient, like the person on the other side owned the place. I opened it, expecting a delivery. Instead, I found Ethan standing there like he'd been invited. He didn't even say hello. He just walked in. Walked. Right. In. Whoa, Ethan. What are you doing here? I asked, scrambling after him. He didn't answer. He just looked around like he was on some HGTV scouting mission. He tapped walls, opened cabinets, checked water pressure in the bathroom, measured the living room with an app. The man who once complained that getting up to throw away a pizza box was too much cardio suddenly had the energy of a home inspector on commission. "You should knock out this wall," he said, pointing at the kitchen. "Make an open concept. Adds value." "Please get out of my house," I said. He just smiled like I'd made a cute joke and kept walking. That's when he said the sentence that made my skin crawl. "You really did great with our style." Our. I hadn't dated this man in almost a year and he was talking like we had picked paint swatches together last week. For context, Ethan never helped with anything when we were together. I once asked him to take out the trash and he said, and I quote, "I don't vibe with chores." But now suddenly he was a real estate expert. When he finally left, I locked the door behind him and told myself he was just curious, maybe jealous, maybe trying to save face. But then the texts started. At first they were harmless. "What's the square footage? How big is the garage? Did you get a good rate?" I answered one or two out of politeness, until he sent me a 3-page list of recommended renovations, complete with cost estimates and projected value increases. I ignored him. That was my mistake. Because ignoring Ethan felt, to him, like an invitation. The next day when I pulled into my driveway after work, he was sitting on my front porch. Just sitting there. Like he lived there. He waved cheerfully, completely ignoring how my jaw dropped. "I checked your back fence," he said. "The latch is loose. You should fix that before someone sneaks in." I didn't even know what to say. I told him to leave. He didn't. He stayed there for 20 more minutes lecturing me about gutter maintenance until I finally pretended I was calling the police. That got him off the property. Temporarily. The real turning point came a week later, when my friend Maya came by and mentioned something that made my stomach drop. "Hey," she said casually, "Ethan told Daniel you two are doing home renovations together. Like you're some sort of fixer-upper duo." My blood ran cold. "What?" Maya looked at me. "Yeah. He said you two are rebuilding your foundation. Whatever that means." That's when I realized Ethan wasn't visiting me out of curiosity. He wasn't checking on the neighborhood. He wasn't being friendly. He was rewriting our history. He was planting a narrative. And then things escalated at lightning speed. First came a spreadsheet. Yes, a literal spreadsheet, where he listed every time he supported me emotionally during our relationship. Every pep talk. Every time he drove me to work when my car was in the shop. Every time he motivated me. Apparently, these were now financial contributions. According to him, I wouldn't have the career or the house I had today without him. Then he did the unthinkable. He showed up at my job, my actual workplace. He walked right into the lobby during my lunch break, holding a folder like he was delivering legal documents. "We need to talk about the house," he said. "Our house." "It's not our anything," I hissed. "You need to leave before my boss sees you." He didn't leave. He sat down and started flipping through property sale listings like he was my realtor. That's when he said it. The sentence that changed everything. "I'm entitled to half. Either we split it, or you pay me out." I laughed in his face because the alternative was screaming in the lobby of my company. Half of a house I bought alone. A house he didn't even know existed until I posted it online. But Ethan wasn't joking. He reached into his folder and pulled out a printed letter demanding either $50,000 or legal co-ownership of my home. I snatched the paper out of his hand and walked away before I did something unprofessional. But he wasn't finished. Oh no. Ethan always had one more twist waiting. Because the next thing he did was something I never, ever expected. Something so invasive and so insane that even now it makes my chest tighten when I think about it. And that moment begins because what Ethan did next crossed a line I didn't even know existed. The day I came home and found Ethan inside my locked house was the day everything exploded. The day I came home and found Ethan inside my locked house, I swear my heart didn't just drop. It flatlined. I pulled into the driveway after a long shift, exhausted, sweaty, ready to crawl into bed. My mind was on leftover pasta and maybe an episode of some trashy dating show. But the second I stepped onto my porch, something felt off. You know that weird instinct humans have when a room has been disturbed? When the air feels used. That's exactly what hit me. My front door, my freshly installed, brand new, security-approved front door, was slightly open. Just an inch. But an inch was enough. My keys were still in my hand. No packages on the porch. No signs of forced entry. Just the door, parted like someone had stepped in and forgotten to close it. I pushed it open slowly, my breath catching because I already knew. I knew he was inside. And I was right. "Oh, hey. You're home early," Ethan called from my kitchen like he'd been waiting for me to bring him a snack. He didn't even look surprised. He was rummaging through my drawers, like he was searching for spoons before dinner. A casual chaos. A crime scene wrapped in domestic energy. "What the hell are you doing?" I demanded. Ethan turned, holding a tape measure in one hand and a granola bar from MY Pantry in the other. "Relax. I was just taking measurements. We need to plan the layout before demos start." Demos. I stared at him, so stunned my brain short-circuited. "How did you get in?" He shrugged like that was the smallest detail of the situation. "You gave me a key once, remember?" 3 years ago, I snapped. "To my old apartment, which I changed the locks on the week after you left." He raised his eyebrows like I was being dramatic. "Keys are universal sometimes. You'd be surprised." That sentence alone told me everything I needed to know. "Ethan," I said slowly, "did you make a copy of my house key?" He didn't answer. He didn't have to. His silence was a confession dipped in arrogance. I grabbed my phone, ready to call the police right then and there, but he stepped forward, hands up like I was the unreasonable one. "Can you calm down? I came to show Brittany the house." Brittany. His new girlfriend. The girl he'd cheated on me with. That was the moment I noticed another pair of shoes by the door. I turned to see her standing awkwardly in the living room, arms hugged tight around her bag, eyes darting between us like she'd walked into a movie midway through and didn't understand the plot. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Ethan told me this was, like, your shared place." My mouth dropped open. Shared place. Shared. Ethan stepped between us and started gesturing toward the master bedroom. "I was just showing her the room where we'll put our bed when we stay here every other week." I can't even describe the level of rage that hit me. It wasn't hot anger. It was cold, sharp, calculated. The kind of anger that makes your voice drop an octave. "Brittany," I said softly, "come with me." I walked her into the kitchen, away from Ethan's delusional monologue about our renovation vision, and told her everything. How Ethan cheated on me. How he lived rent-free. How I paid his bills. How he was never on any lease, any mortgage, Any document. How I bought this house with money I saved after leaving him. How he'd been breaking in, harassing me, claiming I owed him half. Brittany's face turned white. "Ethan," she called, her voice slicing the air like a blade, "is any of that true?" He laughed. A weird, defensive, too loud laugh. "She's making it dramatic. I invested 3 years of emotional support. That counts for something." "Emotional support," I repeated, because I truly could not believe my ears. "You once told me washing your own dishes lowered your vibration." Brittany turned on him like a storm. "Did you really tell me this house was yours? Did you really say she agreed to split it? Did you seriously take pictures of her rooms and show them to your family?" He looked offended. Offended. I was setting expectations. "You lied," she snapped. "About everything." Ethan reached for her arm, but she jerked away so fast she knocked into a chair. "Don't touch me," she hissed. "In fact, don't come back to my apartment either." That was the first time I saw fear flicker in Ethan's eyes. Not remorse. Not guilt. For that his world, the fantasy he'd built, was collapsing. He turned to me. "You didn't have to tell her all that. Get out. Can we just talk? Get out." I didn't yell it. I growled it, and something in my voice finally convinced him. He stormed toward the door, muttering under his breath about ungrateful women and owed compensation. Brittany followed him out, but before she left, she turned back and whispered, "I'm so sorry. I had no idea." The second the door closed, I locked it. Then I locked the back door. Then the windows. Then I checked the closets even though I knew they were empty. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely text. And you'd think that was the climax, right? The peak of chaos. No, that was only the midpoint. Because the next morning, while I was still processing everything, Ethan slid a thick, official-looking envelope under my door. Inside was a formal document, typed, formatted, signed by him, claiming he was legally entitled to 40% of my home due to emotional labor, motivational contributions, and partnership synergy. Partnership synergy. I genuinely thought it was a prank, until I flipped the page and saw he had filed an intent to pursue legal mediation. Ethan wasn't guessing. Ethan wasn't delusional. Ethan was plotting. And then came the worst part, the day he showed up again, with something far more dangerous than a copied key or a fake claim. Something that forced me to call the police, hire a lawyer, and start documenting every single second of his behavior. By the time I finished reading Ethan's legal document, my hands were trembling so badly that the papers rattled. 40% of my house. Emotional labor. Motivational contribution. Partnership synergy. I sat at my kitchen table staring at the page like it was written in a different language. Nobody on earth could be that delusional. Nobody. Except Ethan. I should have immediately called 911. Or a lawyer. Or a priest. Because clearly I was dealing with a demon in sweatpants. But instead I grabbed my phone and called Maya. "Hey, what?" she shrieked after I sent her photos of the documents. "Girl, this man has lost his remaining 2 brain cells. He broke into my house." "I know. He brought the girl he cheated with." "I know. And now he's trying to legally steal my home." "Okay," she said, breathless. "We are entering Defcon 1. But even Maya didn't know how bad things were about to get. Because Ethan had escalated from delusional to dangerous. It started with the small things, the things you don't notice at first because you're too stressed out to connect the dots. Like the fact that my porch mat was crooked one morning. Or how my garbage bin mysteriously rolled back in from the curb before I got home. Or how the LED porch light I'd installed suddenly pointed in a slightly different direction. Little things. Weird things. Things that made you wonder if you were paranoid or if someone had been there. But then something happened that erased all doubt. 3 days after Ethan slipped that fake legal letter under my door, I woke up to a notification on my phone. "Unknown device connected to your Wi-Fi." My stomach dropped. I got up, turned on every light in the house like I was trying to summon angels, and checked every room. Closet. Empty. Bathroom. Clear. Garage. Nothing. Then I opened my laptop and checked the network details. The unknown device was a small, cheap camera. One of those $19 mini spy cams you could order online with 2-day shipping and terrible reviews. I didn't find it right away. It took me almost an hour of tearing apart the house before I spotted the thing, tucked behind a plant on a high shelf in my living room, aimed directly at my couch. My couch. The place I worked. Slept. Ate ice cream at 3 a.m. The place I changed clothes more often than I should admit. I felt sick. Visibly sick. I sat down on the floor because my legs wouldn't hold me up. And that's when I realized something even worse. Ethan didn't put that camera there when he broke in with Brittany. He put it there earlier. He'd been inside my house more than once. I took photos. I recorded a video. I didn't touch the camera, because for the first time, I understood exactly what I needed. Evidence. That was the moment I called the police. And that's how Officer Collins entered my life. A woman with braids pulled into a tight bun and the kind of expression that said she'd seen every level of stupid a man could produce. She walked through my house slowly, methodically, taking notes. When she saw the spy cam, her jaw clenched. "Did he have permission to be inside your home?" she asked. "Absolutely not." "Do you have proof he entered?" "Yes." I handed her the photos, the messages he'd sent, the fake letter, and the screenshot of the Wi-Fi alert. She looked through everything, exhaling sharply. "You did the right thing calling us," she said. "This is not a misunderstanding. This is harassment, and it's escalating." She asked if I wanted to file a formal report. I didn't hesitate. "Yes." She wrote everything down, gave me a case number, then looked me dead in the eyes. "Change your locks today. All of them. And if he shows up again, call immediately. Not later. Not after you talk to him. Immediately." And I would have called a locksmith right then, except something else happened first. Something so insane it made everything before it look like a warm-up round. Ethan showed up again. But this time, he wasn't alone. I was standing in my living room with Officer Collins when we heard knocking. Fast, frantic, and way too familiar. I froze. She motioned for me to stay back and open the door only halfway. But Ethan didn't wait for me to open the door. He walked right in. Just barreled inside like he lived there, a folder in one hand and this wild, manic look in his eyes. "We need to talk," he shouted. Officer Collins stepped forward. "Sir, step back outside." Ethan stopped mid-sentence. "Who are you?" "Police." Ethan turned red instantly. "Oh, so you called the cops on me? Seriously?" "Sir," she said calmly, "take your hand off the doorknob and step back." He did, but he kept talking. "I wasn't breaking in. I was just checking on things. You left your curtain open yesterday, and anyone could have looked inside. So technically I was protecting her privacy." Officer Collins blinked slowly. "Do you hear yourself?" "Yes," he snapped, "and I don't appreciate this hostility. I have a legal interest in this house." "No, you do not," she interrupted. "This house is solely hers. You have no claims, no rights, no access, and no permission to be here." Ethan waved that stupid folder. "Actually, I filed paperwork." She snatched it out of his hand. It wasn't paperwork. It was a printed template he found online about shared domestic contribution claims, not even filled out correctly. Officer Collins looked at him like she was diagnosing a medical condition. "Sir, leave this property, and if you return, you will be arrested." Ethan looked at me. "You're really doing this?" "You put a camera in my house," I said. "You broke in. You lied to your girlfriend. You lied to your family. And you're stalking me." "I'm not stalking you," he snapped. "I'm fighting for what's mine." "Nothing here is yours," I yelled. Officer Collins stepped between us. "Sir, final warning." Ethan backed out of the doorway slowly, like he was memorizing every detail of the house. And then he said something that still chills me. "If you think I'm giving up," he whispered, "you don't know me at all." Then he walked away. No yelling. No slamming the door. Just that quiet threat hanging in the air like smoke. Officer Collins turned to me. "Change your locks today. And you need legal support immediately." So I hired a lawyer. And that's when things went from scary to strategic. Because Ethan wasn't just obsessed. He was about to make a move so calculated, so manipulative, so legally twisted, that even my lawyer had to pause and say, "Okay, this guy is dangerous." Hiring a lawyer should have made me feel safer, but honestly, All it did was make the situation feel terrifyingly real. My attorney, her name was Alana, was this calm, razor-sharp woman who had the exact energy of someone who wins arguments before they even start. When I walked into her office with my photos, screenshots, the spy cam footage, and Ethan's deranged legal claim, she didn't laugh. She didn't even blink. She just said, "Okay, we're dealing with a delusional opportunist. Good news, documentation beats delusion every time." And then she asked the question I'd been avoiding, "Has he threatened you?" Even indirectly. I froze, remembering Ethan's voice at my door, "If you think I'm giving up, you don't know me at all." I repeated that to her. She wrote it down without looking up, which somehow made it even scarier. "We can use that," she said. Before I left, she instructed me to save everything. Every text, every voicemail, every time he drove past, every shadow near my porch camera. Harassers don't stop. They escalate. So we prepare. She was right, because Ethan didn't back down. He doubled down. And he did it in the most Ethan way possible, by weaponizing stupidity and turning it into a pseudo-legal strategy. 2 days after I hired Alana, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is your final chance to negotiate. If you keep ignoring me, we'll settle this in court." I didn't respond. I forwarded it to Alana. An hour later, another one came. "I'm documenting your refusal to communicate. You're making this harder than it needs to be." That sentence was hilarious because the only thing I refused to do was commit a crime. But according to Alana, it wasn't funny. He's trying to create a paper trail to make himself look cooperative and you look hostile. It's classic manipulation. Then the phone call started. Random numbers. No caller ID. A blocked number that left a 7-minute voicemail of nothing but him breathing and clicking a pen. I forwarded everything. Alana filed a harassment motion. But Ethan wasn't done. He had a plan. A very stupid, very Ethan plan. He started telling people, mutual friends, acquaintances, even my co-workers, that I'd promised him a share of my house verbally. That we'd made a deal. That I was backing out. One co-worker actually pulled me aside at lunch like, "Hey, so I heard you and your ex are in a property dispute. Are you okay?" I wanted to scream. Instead, I said, "He's lying," and walked away before my rage turned into a TED Talk. But then came the moment that almost broke me. He involved his family. His mother called me, leaving a voicemail that sounded like she was scolding a toddler. "I don't understand why you're withholding something that rightfully belongs to both of you. Ethan told us you two agreed to share the investment. Honey, don't be petty. Be fair." Petty. Petty. I almost threw my phone into the sun. But the true horror arrived 2 days later. I came home from work and there was a letter taped to my door. Not slipped under it. Not left in the mailbox. Taped. Like a warning. But this time, it wasn't written by Ethan. It was written by a lawyer. A real one. A licensed attorney apparently willing to represent a man claiming he deserved a portion of my home because he provided emotional infrastructure. Emotional infrastructure. That was the actual wording. I almost fell over. I sent photos to Alana and expected her to laugh or tell me this was a joke. But she didn't laugh. She didn't smile. She just said, "Okay. He's found someone reckless enough to take his money. This means war." The letter claimed Ethan contributed support, stability, and partnership value during our relationship, enabling my current success. It argued I owed him compensation under something called constructive domestic investment. Not a real legal concept, but apparently creative enough that his lawyer was willing to try. "So now what?" I asked, rubbing my temples. Alana opened her file. "Now," she said, "we show the court who he is." And here's where things shifted. Because up until now, it was Ethan obsessively chasing me. But suddenly Cynthia, yes, I learned her name, was chasing him. She wanted to know who this man she'd been living with really was. She wanted answers. And she wasn't getting them from Ethan. 2 days after that ridiculous lawyer letter appeared, I was sitting in a cafe, sipping a drink, trying to breathe, when someone walked up and sat across from me without asking. It was Brittany, the girl he cheated with. She looked tired, older somehow. Like months had passed since I last saw her, not days. I broke up with him, she said without a hello. Good, I replied. She nodded like she agreed but wasn't proud of it. I didn't know he was doing all that to you. But when I confronted him, he turned it around and said you were trying to sabotage him. Then he said he was owed your house because you wouldn't be successful without him. My jaw dropped. He told you that too. She laughed bitterly. He's told everyone. She took out her phone and opened her messages. I think you need to see something. She slid the phone across the table. It was messages, pages and pages, from Ethan to her. He admitted to breaking into my house. Admitted to making a key copy. Admitted he deserved a piece of the property because he inspired me. Admitted he'd been watching my house to keep track of equity progression. The words felt like acid. Brittany swallowed hard. I'm sorry. I didn't know. I thought he was different. They always look different, I said. She kept scrolling. Then she showed me the final message he sent her before she blocked him. A message that made my stomach drop. If she wants a war, she'll get one. I've been keeping records. I know more than she thinks. More than I think. Records. Of what? Brittany left after apologizing 17 more times. That same night I forwarded every screenshot to Alana. She responded instantly. He's building a false case. He's collecting anything he can twist. We need to move fast. That was the moment everything clicked. Ethan wasn't just trying to scare me. He wasn't just trying to mooch off my success. He wasn't just being delusional. He was preparing for battle. And he wasn't bluffing. Because the next thing he did wasn't a text, or a letter, or a visit. It was something far more calculated. Something that made me wonder if he'd been planning this even before we broke up. The night Brittany showed me those screenshots, I barely slept. Not because I was scared. Fear had burned out of me days ago. What I felt now was something colder, something sharper. Awareness. Because the messages he sent her, they didn't sound impulsive. They didn't sound like a man spiraling out of control. They sounded strategic. Like he'd been laying groundwork. Like he'd been planning something long before I realized it. And the worst part, I didn't know what he had. I didn't know what records he'd been keeping. I didn't know what he thought I'd given him during the relationship. But I was about to find out. The next morning, I took the day off work to meet with my lawyer, Alana. She had all the screenshots printed and arranged in a binder like she was prepping for trial. He's not just delusional, she said. He's creating a narrative. And narratives, even false ones, can cause damage if left unanswered. She flipped the binder toward me. But the message about keeping records, that's the real problem. Because that means he thinks he has leverage. What kind of leverage could he possibly have over me? I asked. Alana leaned back in her chair. With people like him, anything. Old texts, photos, emails. Maybe he's twisted something you said. Maybe he's fabricating receipts. Maybe he's using your old relationship as evidence of some imaginary agreement. My stomach tightened. So what do? We get ahead of it, she said. I'm filing for a temporary restraining order this week, and I'm drafting an official cease and desist letter to his attorney. But in the meantime, we need to figure out what he thinks he has. I didn't have long to wait, because later that afternoon, while I was still in her office, my phone buzzed with an email from a name I didn't recognize. Subject line, proof of investment. I opened it, and I swear, if rage could physically manifest, flames would have shot out of my ears. It was Ethan. He created a full PDF packet, 26 pages long, labeled, Evidence of Contribution to Household and Career Development. I opened it. The first page made me want to scream. He'd screenshot old text messages from years ago, messages where I thanked him for supporting me during a stressful work week. Not emotional support. Literally supporting me by picking up takeout when I was swamped at the office. He highlighted that sentence in blinding yellow. See? Support. Then there were screenshots of times I told him he'd been helpful or motivated me. Most of these were from random days when he washed a dish one time or said good luck before an interview. He labeled these as career coaching. Next were photos I'd taken, of us at restaurants or on trips. He annotated every single one with captions like date I paid for or trip I contributed to. The problem? I paid for most of those. He had simply taken screenshots of the photos without the receipts to prove otherwise. Then came the most insane part, a spreadsheet. A color-coded, overly formatted, delusion-drenched spreadsheet titled, Emotional Labor Log. Dates, notes, timestamps. Lines like, provided emotional reassurance while she was stressed, value $75. Listened to her vent after bad day at work, value $120. Encouraged her to apply for promotion, value $350. Total at the bottom, $42,680. $42,680. I nearly threw my phone. But he wasn't done. The last section of the packet made my jaw hit the floor. Emails, forwarded from his account, where he'd written to his own family members about the house you two are buying together months before I even started saving. He forged a narrative. He planted lies. He told people we were planning our financial future. He told his mom he had equity coming soon. He told his brother he was in the middle of a major real estate agreement. And then came the final blow, a screenshot of my old budgeting spreadsheet from years ago. A spreadsheet I once showed him when we were living together. He zoomed in on one category labeled, Future House Fund. And he circled it, with a red marker, and wrote, proof she acknowledged joint goals. I stayed at the screen in disgust and disbelief. How did he get this? Alana asked. I showed him once. That's it. Did he ever access your computer? He lived with me for 2 years. He absolutely accessed it. She nodded. Then this tracks. I rubbed my forehead. Alana, this is insane. None of this proves anything. Legally. No, she said. Emotionally. He thinks it does. Men like this don't need real proof. They need material they can twist. I slumped in the chair. He's going to bring all of this to court, isn't he? Absolutely, she said. But here's the good news. It's all ridiculous. And actually, it helps us. How? She tapped the binder. Because this isn't evidence. This is obsession. I breathed out slowly. So now what? Alana steepled her fingers. Now, we hit him with the restraining order. And we prepare for the hearing. You need to expect him to show up with more fabricated evidence. Screenshots, emails, maybe even witnesses he manipulated. I swallowed. Witnesses. His family, his friends, anyone he convinced you wronged him. That thought alone made my stomach twist. But the true nightmare wasn't the email, or the fake evidence, or the delusions. It happened that evening. At 9:13 p.m., my security camera sent me a motion alert. Not on my porch, not in my driveway, but at my back fence. I opened the live feed, and there he was, Ethan, standing there, not approaching, not touching anything, just watching my house, watching my windows, watching me, like he was taking mental notes, like he was gathering more records. I froze. My heart stopped. I didn't breathe for a solid 10 seconds. Then he turned, slowly, and walked away. Not running, not hiding, just strolling into the dark like he owned the night. I called Alana. She picked up instantly. Did he come onto the property? He was at my fence. Save the footage. What is he doing? She didn't pause. He's gathering more evidence. He's trying to intimidate you. Trying to make you react. Don't. We use this. Use it for what? She exhaled. For the hearing. Because tomorrow morning, she paused. You're being served. His lawyer just filed. Ethan wasn't waiting anymore. Ethan wasn't pretending anymore. Ethan wasn't drifting around the edges. He was going all in. Official. Legal. Aggressive. And whatever he filed, whatever claim he made, was going to be the biggest betrayal yet. And the biggest illusion. So big it would change the entire direction of the case. Part 6. The courtroom where reality finally met his delusion. The morning I got served, I was still half asleep, wearing mismatched socks, holding a cup of coffee I absolutely did not need, when someone knocked on my door with the gentle aggression of a debt collector. I opened it an inch, because after everything Ethan had pulled, I wasn't opening anything fully for anyone, and a man in a suit held out a stack of papers thicker than my high school history textbook. "Are you the homeowner?" he asked. I nodded slowly, dread crawling up my spine. "You've been served," he said, handing me the packet like it was a prize instead of a nightmare wrapped in printer ink. I closed the door, locked it, triple-locked it, and carried the documents to the table like they were radioactive. When I finally opened the first page, my jaw didn't just drop, it fell through the floor. Ethan had filed a civil claim for co-ownership and retroactive compensation, and I swear, if delusion was a currency, he'd be richer than Jeff Bezos. He claimed he was entitled to half of my house because of a verbal property partnership, co-investment expectation, and shared domestic destiny. Shared domestic destiny. I almost screamed. I sent photos to Alana with a single message, "Help." She replied instantly, "Come in. Now." I didn't even change clothes. I drove straight to her office looking like a raccoon who'd forgotten how sleep worked. She spread out the documents on her desk, flipping through them like she was speed-reading garbage. "He really filed this," she muttered. I knew he was reckless, but this is impressive in the worst way. "Can he win?" I asked, breath shallow. "Not unless the judge is drunk or concussed," she said. "But he can waste your time. And that's the point." The hearing was scheduled for the following week. I spent every day between then and the court date collecting evidence, screenshots, police reports, witness statements, and printing everything in triplicate. Meanwhile, Ethan kept sending vague, cryptic texts like, "Hope you're ready. You pushed me to this. Truth comes out soon." I didn't respond to any of them. I didn't breathe near them. I didn't even open them fully, just screenshot and forwarded to Alana like a paranoid secretary. But the night before the hearing, something happened that knocked what little piece I had straight into the trash. At 11:42 p.m., I got a voicemail. I almost ignored it until I saw the transcription. "I'm bringing proof tomorrow. She won't be able to lie her way out of this." My stomach dropped. Proof of what? What lies? What was he talking about? Alana told me to stay calm, but my brain had already spiraled into 17 worst-case scenarios involving forged contracts, edited photos, deepfakes, blackmail, and him printing one of my old text messages and highlighting it like the Constitution. But nothing prepared me for what he actually brought. The next morning, I walked into the courthouse wearing the most "I'm done with your nonsense" outfit I owned. Black slacks, blazer, hair in a bun so tight it could cut metal. Alana walked beside me like a general leading a soldier into battle. When we entered the courtroom, Ethan was already there, sitting on the opposite bench with his lawyer, looking smug. Too smug. Smug in a way that made me want to reconsider the laws around tasers. He looked at me like he'd already won. Like the house keys were already in his pocket. Like the judge was going to crown him king of my mortgage. I sat down, hands cold, heart pounding. The judge entered. Everyone stood. The hearing began. Ethan's lawyer went first, this man in a wrinkled suit who looked like he specialized in losing cases and blaming the lighting. "Your Honor," he began dramatically, "today we present evidence that my client and the defendant," he pointed at me, "had an established verbal agreement to jointly invest in the property she now occupies." The judge raised an eyebrow like, "Already? Really?" The lawyer continued, "We will show proof of financial, emotional, and motivational contributions that directly impacted the purchase of the home. My client was a partner in all but name." I nearly choked. Alana squeezed my arm like, "Don't. Breathe. Fire." Then Ethan's lawyer dropped the line that made the entire courtroom pause, "And we have records to prove it." He opened a folder, pulled out a USB drive, and slid it toward the clerk. Surveillance logs, communication transcripts, and a recorded timeline of contributions. My blood turned to ice. Surveillance logs. Recorded timeline. He didn't. He couldn't have. But he did. The judge ordered the files displayed on the courtroom screen. And that's when the stupidity reached a level that should be preserved in a museum. The first video began playing, and it wasn't evidence of contributions. It wasn't a contract. It wasn't a recorded agreement. It was Ethan, recording himself, talking to the camera, like a vlogger. He sat on my old couch, at my old apartment, saying things like, Day 14 of contributing emotional foundation. Bought her a smoothie today that should count as a $40 investment at least. Listening to her stress about work again, emotional labor is exhausting. This better pay off. Pay off. The courtroom was silent. The judge blinked. Twice. Ethan's lawyer looked like he wished the earth would open and swallow him whole. Then the next file loaded, a recorded walkthrough Ethan filmed in my house when he broke in. Him narrating his future plans. This is the bedroom where our bed will go. This is going to be our office. I'm thinking we knock down this wall when we renovate. A house he didn't own. A house he'd entered illegally. A house he stalked. The judge held up a hand. Pause the video. The clerk froze the screen on Ethan, proudly pointing at my bedroom like he was choosing tile samples. The judge looked at his lawyer. Sir, are you sure you want to continue using this as evidence? Ethan jumped up. Yes. That shows intent. That shows involvement. The judge blinked slowly. It shows trespassing. Ethan deflated like a balloon losing air. His lawyer sat down, defeated. Then it was our turn. Alana stood with the confidence of a woman who had been waiting her whole life to end a delusional man. She handed the judge a binder thick enough to be classified as a weapon. Police reports, spy cam footage, unauthorized entry logs, harassing messages, screenshots, witness statements. She even had a printed transcript of his breathing into the phone voicemail. The judge read silently for a long time. Then he looked at Ethan. Sir, you have no legal claim. None. You did not contribute financially. You had no agreement. You did not cohabitate during the purchase. And your evidence. He tapped the screen where Ethan was frozen mid-hand gesture, pointing at our imaginary office. Is incriminating, not supportive. Ethan sank in his seat. His lawyer put his face in his hands. Then the judge delivered the final blow. I see more than enough grounds for a restraining order. Effective immediately. I exhaled so hard I nearly slid off the bench. But Ethan didn't. He stood up, face red, eyes wild. This isn't over, he snapped. You can't take my future from me. The bailiff stepped forward. Sir, sit down. But Ethan didn't sit. He pointed at me, shaking. I'm not done. She stole from me. The judge slammed his gavel. Sit down. The courtroom fell silent. Ethan Saturday, shaking, breathing hard, and glaring at me like I'd shattered his entire reality. Like I was the villain in his fantasy. Like he wasn't done, just paused. And that was the moment I realized the scariest part wasn't the case, or the break-ins, or the delusion. The scariest part was the look he gave me. A look that said, if he couldn't take my house legally, he'd find another way. The moment Ethan left the courtroom, flanked by a grim-faced bailiff, a weight I didn't realize I'd been carrying lifted slightly, but the shadow lingered. Alana turned to me, eyes sharp but relieved. You're safe. The restraining order covers your home, your work, your social life. You have every legal right to peace now. I nodded, still trembling, not from the courtroom adrenaline, but from the realization that this wasn't just a case. This had been a glimpse into how dangerously someone could let fantasy override reality. That evening, I sat in my apartment, the silence almost deafening. No texts, no knocks, no mysterious packages. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the soft glow of my desk lamp. And for the first time in months, I allowed myself to breathe fully. I made a cup of tea, curled up on my couch, and reflected on the absurdity of what had just transpired. Ethan had built a world where we were co-owners, co-conspirators in some imaginary domestic saga, but the law didn't recognize dreams or delusions as currency. Only reality mattered. Only evidence mattered. And the evidence had been crystal clear. Still, the sense of vulnerability didn't vanish overnight. Every creak of the apartment, every shadow cast by the street lamp outside, made me flinch. I called my landlord, asked the building to increase security, and even changed my routines. Small actions that reminded me I was reclaiming control. I wasn't cowering. I was strategic. I was awake. I was present. Then came the calls from friends and neighbors. Are you okay? Do you need anything? Do you want me to come over? Each one reminded me that life didn't have to be a lonely vigil. The support network I'd built over the years suddenly felt like armor stronger than any lock or legal document. Alana checked in, too. "Stay vigilant," she said. "But also remember, you survived this." He did not win. That's victory. Weeks passed. Ethan's name disappeared from my inbox, my voicemail, even the local news that briefly caught wind of his bizarre civil claim. It was as if the universe had hit refresh, giving me a chance to reclaim my space without someone else's fantasy dangling over it. And yet, I never stopped watching. Subtly, cautiously, aware that a delusion this intense didn't vanish completely, it only retreated when confronted. Eventually, I returned to normal life, or as normal as life can be after a stranger believes they own your home and documents every imagined interaction. I found humor again in small things, mismatched socks, bad coffee, and the absurdity of the idea that someone could think smoothies and listening counted as property investment. I even laughed aloud one morning while remembering Ethan's emotional labor balance sheet, the sound surprising me with its freedom. And somewhere, in that mix of relief and lingering caution, I realized something important. Fear had its place, but so did resilience. I had survived trespass, harassment, and delusion. I had faced courtrooms and ridiculous claims. I had stared down someone who imagined reality in their favor. And in doing so, I discovered that my life, my real, tangible life, was entirely mine. So yes, Ethan didn't get the house. He didn't get a restraining order lifted. He didn't get co-ownership. And he didn't get to bend reality to fit his fantasies. But he left me with something far more valuable than a victory in court, a lesson in boundaries, courage, and the importance of standing firmly in truth. And as I finally sank into my couch that night, tea warm in my hands, I whispered to no one in particular, reality always wins. And I'm still here. The gavel may have fallen in a courtroom that day, but the real victory happened quietly, in the reclaiming of my life, my peace, and my sanity. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I slept without checking over my shoulder.